think maybe, you know, our parents are more old school. They're also immigrants, so they have a different mindset. So maybe they've said some. I don't know if your parents have ever said anything ignorant, you know. But,
no, they have, and
you know,
I think my parents and I have a good enough relationship, or enough of a mutual respect type of relationship that when they say something that I disagree with, I will let them know. No, I don't. I'm not going to be like, oh, you're generalizing, you're a racist, or blah blah. No, I let them know why their thoughts on certain things aren't necessarily, the right way to approach a subject.
Yeah.
Right. We spoke about it briefly last week or maybe it was one of our production shows where I was saying that for a lot of older Africans, when they see what's going on with African Americans, they're always like, oh, why can't those African Americans just get it together and get it right? And
you're breaking up.
Oh, sorry. How about now?
Yeah,
Better?
repeat. I want because it sounded like it was something good that you just said. I want to make sure that
No, it was
I hear it.
literally nothing.
If people heard it, I want to make sure I heard it too.
Okay, yeah. So what I was saying is, I think we had a conversation during one of our production shows about how Africans and some other immigrant groups, but I'm going to speak to Africans specifically because that's my experience. Africans tend to look down on African Americans, and say that you're in this situation where you're poor and all that stuff. Why can't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that stuff? And then I have to kind of explain to them that these things that we're just assuming that they're in that situation because they want to be. We don't realize that the stuff they're fighting about, the civil rights movement and all that stuff, this wasn't that long ago. Like this is their recent past, and there's a lot of remnants from that they're still suffering from. And I know even my mom or dad said something. I'm not going to put it out here. They said something at one point that I laid out for them why that was wrong, and then they're like, I never thought about it that way. My bad, basically, right? So sometimes it's about being able to have that mutual respect and have that conversation.
And I definitely agree with that. And you know what? Honestly, so if there are any immigrant children, like children of immigrant parents listening, who have had these similar situations, they'll understand too. I've had similar situations with that. Like it's just something that just wasn't 100% right, or wasn't right at all for them to say, or like. Ignorant sounds like a bad word, like you're disrespectful word, but it's not. It just means they're not knowledgeable.
You're not aware.
And then also one thing and where I think me and you are speaking more on racial issues or cultural situations, opposed to in this situation it seems to be it just seems family abuse kind of, right, with Claudia Conway and the family. But with us, it's more along the lines of we also are able to pinpoint to the fact that, hey, look. This friend of mine, he's that. You don't have a problem with him,
right?
So it's just don't generalize. You know what I mean? And that actually that's a conversation that should be had. Just because it's still going on. And I think one of the biggest things is that we should discuss, and what by we I mean as a society within our own cultures, is talk about our own issues and our own ignorance and our own xenophobia that we have among our own people,
and our own come to Jesus moments, so to speak, when we realize that this is how we think about things, and we shouldn't. I think Hassan Minaj, whose show on Netflix just got canceled, by the way.
I've seen 2 episodes of his. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with Hassan Minaj real fast before you go into that. Well, say that first. I just want to give you a quick review of Hassan Minaj after
all right. So I was going to say, Hassan Minaj, whose show just got canceled, he had a segment shortly after the George Floyd murder. And it was talking about, he was speaking almost directly to Asian Americans, and not just Asian Americans as in Southeast Asians, but he's talking about South Asians as well, like Indian folks, right? His people, saying that this should matter to you too. And then he was talking about how Indians have, the Indian people that he's grown up around others, his parents or his peers generalize black people, but also darker skinned Indians. And it was going in on why that's wrong. And it was such a powerful segment, right? And I was like, this is a conversation people need to have within themselves, because it's very easy to go online and put hashtag Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. But to actually live that is a very different thing. And it starts with being honest with yourself on how you think about things, and then having the conversation with each other, right? But I know you want to give a review on Hassan Minaj, so you do that, and then I'll go into what I was going to say, because it ties back to the Kellyanne Conway.
All right, perfect. Just with Hassan Minaj, I watched the obesity episode where he was talking about how America has affected the obesity around the world, not just in America.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the one where he interviewed Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing with Hassan Minaj, I think he's funny, and I like his show, but he's just all this. Even though I do this, yeah, he's just so, and it just makes me nervous. It makes me anxious. But if you do want to learn about certain issues, especially from a minority's perspective, because that's what he brings a minority's perspective to a lot of things.
Yeah,
I definitely recommend the Patriot Act. It's a great show. I'm
gonna link that Patriot Act clip about the George Floyd murder. I think that's like appointment viewing for anyone. So so to wrap up on on what we're talking about as far as like being able to talk to your parents about certain things in a respectful way. The thing with Kellyanne Conway's daughter is that it's the most public example of a trend we've been seeing in the last, like over the summer, basically. And it was something I actually saw in a BuzzFeed article where it's like a bunch of these kids with, I think it's TikToks, maybe it's Instagrams, I don't know. But they have these social media accounts where they're posting, like their parents don't know that they're recording, but they're posting conversations with their parents in which the parent is saying blatantly racist things in response to a conversation they're trying to have about what's going on in society. Like, well, maybe he shouldn't have been there, or maybe he shouldn't have been a drug dealer, or maybe, those kind of things. And it was like a trend of like, what do they call it? Finding out that your parents are racist or something like that.
Like a hashtag or something?
Something like that. And my thought process, right, just because of, my experience, my immigrant experience or whatever, my thought process is there's always a way to disagree respectfully with your parents. It doesn't have to be like this. Even though the parents were saying things that I completely disagree with, the parents on these videos, right, they were saying some really racist things. I was like, there could have been a better way to get those points across. And I think that's what's going on here as well.
Yeah, and I can agree with you to a degree on that, but we also got to look at the degree of how far to whatever side that person, the parent is being, right?
Right.
So
can they be pulled back?
Exactly, and it's kind of a humbling that they need to realize, like, oh, you are you hearing what you're saying? Well, guess what? You're famous now. You're hearing what you're saying. If you're mad at me because I exposed you more than you're mad at the vile, toxic stuff that you're saying, then you're not gonna listen. And I honestly feel like I wouldn't do that with my mom and my dad, but I don't feel like I would need to, because they don't go that far to the. But my question would be: are these people exposing people who are actually in some form of power? You know what I mean? Like, are you exposing an executive who has the people that he's describing or they're describing under them?
Wield that racism or that prejudice in negative ways.
Exactly, because the thing is, though, you know what hurts a lot when you hear about somebody doing something toxic, somebody doing something racist or vile, and it turns out they're like a nurse or they're a lawyer or they're, you know what I mean, or they're an officer. It's just, you have this mentality, you're carrying it with you all the time. How do I? Because there was a scary statistic that I read about how there are more women of color after when they give birth will die.
Body rate, yeah.
Yeah, the mortality rate is very high when they have a white doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly they said male doctor too. But it's a white doctor versus if they have a person of color being their doctor, right? So it's just kind of like, if anybody gets upset at children doing this to their parents, maybe we need to really be talking about, like, don't they have the right to kind of, like, look, I'm pretty sure they've had conversations with their mom and dad and told them this and that, and then be like,
right,
I have no power over you because you're my parent.
They didn't start recording during their first conversation. They're recording because they know their parents are about to say something.
Exactly, like
mess. Yeah, so like, I know you.
It's like you're like, hold on, I'll hold your beer. Let me record.
You're about to be racist AF.
So anyways, it'll be interesting to find out how this happens with Kellyanne Conway in regards to, like, if there's anything further development on that. If there is, we'll probably touch on it or whatnot. But yeah, this is just a strange conversation to have, but it just seems like I just felt like it was a conversation we probably should have, just because it's just the family dynamic in relations to politics, in relations to being in the limelight. It's just something that always just seems hectic a lot of times. So that was just something that I felt like we needed to add, but we'll go ahead and move on from this, unless you have something else that you want to add to that.